Hello, I'm Pixie.
And I'm Salem.
And we're happy to welcome you back to the MCNN studio.
We saw a massive influx of volunteers after our last video dropped. Thank you so much to everyone who has pitched in this week.
Adding 15 new correspondents to the team makes for a busy week, but not too busy to bring you all the latest in Limited Life Session 2 news. Here are the week's top stories.
After a scheduling mix-up, the server nearly missed out on B00-100's bruised and smiling face when he was 45 minutes late to filming last Monday.
Thankfully, he made it, or we would have had to replace tonight's headline, B-Dubs vs. Skiz fight report, with Martin tossing Tilly's ashes on the ground, followed by the 2 minutes of horrified silence that joke deserves.
In the scant few minutes before server events really got going, Scar suggested base name The Rock, and Etho asked what we're all thinking about that name.
Wayne Johnson?
Maybe the Clockers should have enlisted Scott and Martin's help with naming. The players, formerly known as the Coral Kids, reunited and racked up quite a list of proposed group names.
Damp Dudes? What about Puddle Pals? Sons of Beaches? This is the one that I really like, and okay. I think we should just lock it in straight away. H2 Bros.
H2 Bros is great.
But eventually settled on Mean Gills.
While the Mean Gills spent the beginning of the session not yet reunited, two other groups were sure from the very start of what their plans are. The Bad Boys were intent on conquering the newly resurrected Dark Oak Mansion, and Ties decided in an opening meeting they wanted in on the Illager action.
Let's hear from Lyric about this early session exploration.
Thanks, Pixie. This week, our players were unsurprised to be greeted with the sight of the Woodland Mansion, which has always been perfectly intact and was definitely not burned down last week. The mansion stands whole and unbothered, save for the small collection of bad boys who made their nest atop it.
Oh, guys, the mansion?
There is diamonds on top of the mansion, which I believe got reset.
All jokes aside, between sessions, the mansion was reset so that Illagers could spawn, which means that the resources in the newly regenerated Woodland Mansion became a high-risk, high-reward target for the server's more resourceful players, and the Bad Boys and Team Ties both started their sessions by taking the risk to jump in.
Do we want to do what we did last episode and dig down?
If we want them, if we want to beat the other teams, we got to go right now.
The Bad Boys had the clear advantage, having made their base atop the mansion, and it took only a broken window for them to claim the diamond block within for a second time. They began their sweep through the mansion and found themselves face to face with some even badder boys. Joel jumped in to try and save Jimmy, but his shield and leather jacket weren't enough to block the axe that took an hour from his timer. With considerably more caution, Team Ties made their final approach to the mansion as well, called forth by the allure of sweet loot. They made it all the way to the roof and broke their way inside before being confronted with the Bad Boys screaming and running, and immediately turned and left the way they came.
Get out, get out, get out!
Oh, boys,
Hi, guys.
Guys!
Team Clockers watched Joel's death with amusement, but their mountain can hardly be Entertainment Mountain if the server's dead respawn at their own bases. To make sure they can continue tormenting everyone else, Scar donned the mask of the Bed Bandit and set off for the mansion to steal the Bad Boys' beds before any of them could die again.
I'm straight up gonna break all the beds.
I'm the Bed Bandit!
Soon after this, known Vex stole the beds and slipped away. Another killed both of the remaining Bad Boys. They spawned at Entertainment Mountain, where they showed off their new skins.
Well, what's with the shades, by the way?
With
Bad Boys.
Ties wisely left the chaos behind to return to their base, and the Bad Boys cleaned up the rest of the loot from their raid of the mansion. Whether a pair of totems and a diamond block will end up being worth losing a total of 3 hours is yet to be seen, but in Grian's words,
I've got a totem though, it's totally worth it.
Back to you in the studio.
Thank you to our correspondents. While the Bad Boys lost their lives, Joel was given a chance to earn some life and some happiness back when he was picked as the boogeyman, something that our team will dive into in a bit.
After turning tail and returning to their base, Ties met again, only to separate into teams for mining, building, and, in Etho's case, goading B-Dubs into challenging Skiz to a duel.
He also spent a chunk of the session building what is either a very unsafe, uniquely decorated base, or a decently productive 3-tier mob farm. Knowing Etho, it could be either or.
Interested in cementing early alliances, and with B-Dubs off to mine diamonds, the Clockers head to Ties and traded much-desired calves for an alliance.
Cleo promised Skiz to hold to the alliance as his clock was the first to tick into yellow life. Scar's dog only interrupted the peace proceedings 3 times to bite Etho, which still managed to be less of a sticking point than Cleo's initial insistence on including B-dubs in the agreement.
The bad boys wandered over soon after the clockers left and traded unlimited bread for gold. A wandering Scot was also close enough to get in on the action and received the same deal, which begs the question, where are they getting all that bread? And why do they want gold? We turn to our correspondents for the details.
The bad boys, specifically Joel, the boogeyman, set their eyes on the mother clocker Cleo and her clocker children as their targets, seeking revenge due to both Cleo's habit of arson and Scar's habit of larceny. Thus the beginning of the Bad Boy Bread Bridge, or the BBBB, was born. The idea to target the happy family was Jimmy's, who no doubt holds a grudge against any arsonist within a 20-mile radius at any given time. After getting gold from Scott and Team Ties, they had the materials they needed to build the most complicated yet somehow still successful trap of the Life series. The bad boys spent the entire first half of the session slowly crawling ever closer towards the Clocker's Rock, with their dual-purpose farm. The entire bridge was a ruse, serving as a disguise for the rail tracks Joel planned to send a TNT minecart down to ruin the day of whoever may be standing at the end. It didn't take long for the rest of the server to notice that things had gone awry, and notice what Martin lovingly referred to as Greenbow Road as it began to stretch from Bad Boy Mansion. Particularly the Clockers, who were rightfully concerned about what might be happening. Scar seemed to be the first to clock the BBBB as a trap.
It's like a poor man's TNT cannon. I do get the feeling it's a Trojan farm.
Despite how glaringly obvious and suspicious the bad boys were, the Clockers were powerless to do anything but let them bake. Joel was able to catch the Clockers off guard and kill both Scar as the bookie kill and Cleo as collateral. Because of this drawn-out but successful kill, Cleo loudly and proudly announced that she was once again going to set the mansion on fire, something that you can hear her say clearly from each of the bad boys' perspectives. Yet, none of them seemed to hear her, and were forced to rush and try to save their burning building. This makes it the 5th time someone has set fire to one of Jimmy's bases.
While the bad boys picked more fights, the Clockers were playing the long game. Arson didn't cool Cleo down, and her next plan is significantly more explosive. Sound-triggered TNT traps scattered around the ruins of the manor. That is, if the group can scrounge up a full level 30 enchanting setup to get their hands on a Silk Touch hoe.
They're closer than you might think. During the post-boogie chaos, Scar snuck over to Bad Boy Manor and stole the enchanting table. Good thing he didn't enlist Tango's help with his robbery, or his cover might have been blown before he ever got his hands on the thing.
You got it, bud.
Scar made it a whole session and a half before stealing the enchanter. That's character growth right there.
The Clockers do still desperately need bookshelves, most of which they believe burned up in the manor, which makes Scott's early session theft of every book that wasn't nailed down particularly valuable. He utilized one book to make his own enchanting table, but the other 23 are still up for grabs.
Could this be the exchange that cements their alliance next session? Perhaps. But in this session, alliances were built on beef. The Clockers paid in steak to ally with the nosy neighbors, who are already beginning to tire of the bad boys' antics.
Hello, I'm Akira. I'm here to report on the brutal gladiatorial battle between Ties member Skizzleman and B-dubs of the Clockers, and considering their history, it will certainly be vicious. In Session 1, freshly respawned from his first biggie death, Skizz was blindsided by a second death from B-dubs. It was actually 12 seconds, but we can forgive the miscount. It's hard enough to keep track when daylight savings drops you 1 hour, and Skizz's clock just dropped him 4. This session, the entire server gathered at spawn to watch the battle, and tease the loser. It's gentleman's rules, and B-dubs allows Skizz his diamond chestplate and axe while he himself stands in pure iron. Is this a play to seem less threatening, or a subtle attempt to allow Skizz the win and solidify a shaky alliance? Foul play is called when Skizz eats a gapple and attacks early. B-dubs takes his time to heal up, and Etho counts them down from the sidelines. Both combatants start defensively with their shields raised, but heckling from the audience demands blood, and B-dubs lands the first hit. And then they're off. He attacks twice more, but Skizz blocks and retaliates, hitting hard with his diamond axe and launching B-dubs across the ring. Skizz chases him down, but misses his second swing. As they turn to face each other, Skizz attacks again and hits. B-dubs slashes Skizz twice more. And then, the fight ends, as B-dubs falls, hatchet buried in his chest. Sore feelings soothed by the win, Skizz and B-dubs snuck away for a private moment between opponents turned allies. Ty's Clockers alliance is solidified. For this session, at least. This fight might have been the big event of the session, but we can't know the thoughts behind the decision without BOO's perspective, and that, dear watchers, is hidden from us. Or is it? We take you now to our private investigator to learn where in the world was BOO.
Thanks, Akira. I'm Anachronistic Cat, and as the King of Clocks has chosen not to post the time-based season, many of us are feeling a bit bereft of B-dubs. Which is why I've been tracking his whereabouts across space and time on the Limited Life server. B-dubs started the week by arriving at Entertainment Mountain 45 minutes late because of car troubles and wearing the wrong face. After reacquiring his signature black eye, he and Cleo went downstairs to breed bulls to barter with Etho in exchange for allies, before Taz could decide to burgle the bovines. B-dubs isn't Boogie, but his allies find trust tricky after last session. So, when the other clockers went to get allies, B-dubs made his first iron pick and went to get alloys. He messaged Cleo, and if his luck is any example, we should all call our moms, because he found diamonds soon after. He spent the next 40 minutes mining, and the other clockers interrupted to tell him that they allied with Ties. B-dubs gave out 4 diamonds apiece and was left to mine in peace. Etho dropped in, and the pair headed up to the labyrinth below Ty's tower, where B-dubs announced his plans to fight Skizz at a disadvantage, called Skizz out in the world chat, and disappeared again into the mines. Back underground, he offered nearly dead Impulse some bread in these trying times. Having now run into T, I, and E, B-dubs decided it was time to rejoin the clockers before S could show up and double his black eyes. He exited at the Rock and found Scar and Cleo at the Nosy Neighbors attempting to ally them against the bad boys.
We lost B-dubs. We don't know where he is, but once we find him, he's gonna be butchering all day.
Turn around, that kind of solves your problem.
There he is! Here I am!
B-dubs remained with the clockers throughout their standoffs with the bad boys until he left to retrieve Skizz for their fated fisticuffs. Everyone traveled to Spawn to watch the fight, which you already heard about from Akira. Afterwards, B-dubs stayed at the Rock while the Nosy Neighbors and clockers looted and pillaged the bad boys' bread bridge. The rest of the session was spent building up the Rock and showing off to Etho. And so, he ended the session at the same place he began it, at the Rock with the clockers. His timer is estimated at somewhere around 19 hours and 14 minutes. Now back to our friends in the studio.
B-dubs seems to have spent most of this session plundering caves, rearing to fight, and breaking ground on the clocker's base. But he wasn't the only one breaking things on the server. While Jimmy made progress in the mines, his teammates Grian and Joel accomplished what many of their fellow players have failed to do: find a way to get past the world border. Their exploration led them to the backside of Etho's Totally Not a Mob Farm, where they partook in a brief reprise of the fishing rod game they played back during Double Life. Thankfully, no deaths occurred this time around.
Their border breaking also brought them past Scott, who was a little too quick in agreeing to let the bad boys spread the bread bridge in the direction of his base in the future. Time will tell if he comes to regret that decision. But for now, we can mark this as a productive session for the Mean Gills, who not only completed their beachside base before the end of the session, but also cemented a few worthwhile deals along the way. Alongside Scott's gold for bread trade we mentioned earlier, Martin and Cleo laid the groundwork for a future alliance between their teams, and Scott also traded bamboo for future gunpowder from Etho's mob farm.
It was a big week for farming, it seems, with Etho farming mobs, Pearl farming pearls, Cleo gifting ties with the potential for farming cows, and the bad boys farming unending bread from their Grainbow Bridge in the sky. Though it looks like the boys may have had some issues with their recent harvest. We go now to our correspondent in the field to tell us what led to their crops being a little less than fruitful.
Skizz's touching words to B-dubs post-battle were of interest to the Nosy Neighbors, as all going-ons of the server are. They followed at a not-so-discreet distance, but were intercepted by Scar and Cleo, who did their best to keep Skizz's speech for B-double eyes only. Oh, and what eyes they are! A mid-session Clocker Neighbors catch-up chat ensued, during which Scar dropped 2 interesting crumbs of information. The first being that Joel, attempting to smooth things over after his boogie kill, had uncharacteristically gifted him a TNT minecart. The second being that Scar, extremely characteristically, hung back before the Skiz v Dubs smackdown and stole the Bad Boys Enchanter. Looking to equip their new enchanter with books, Cleo proposed the group raid the remains of the mansion. And if a few crops got trampled and the odd powered rail got plundered too, well, who was going to stop them? Certainly not Jimmy, left as the sole caretaker of the place, while his fellow bad babes are off flexing on the ocean men with their newfound no-clipping abilities. Jimmy put up a fair fight, but was unable to stop the interlopers from looting the gluten and was soon forced to call in the cavalry via chat. Threatening the clockers with an axe just got him laughed at, and attempts to intimidate the nosy neighbors went just as poorly.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when I come for you?
By the time Grian and Joel made it back to base, everyone had mostly fled the scene of the crime, with a few final taunts from Cleo leaving them understandably ticked off. Phase 2 begins, now that the BBBB had fulfilled its set task of reaping a life for the boogeyman. The bad boys seemed determined to reap the entire server with it, by which we mean extend its insidious farm arms to the 4 corners of the map, starting with the nosy neighbors. As promised by Jimmy and reaffirmed by Joel, the bad boys were indeed coming for them.
You come for Breadbridge, and Breadbridge comes for you.
Oh my gosh.
That's my new motto in life.
Pearl and Bigby weren't giving up the view from their newly erected cobble tower so quickly, though. As the session wound down and the other factions regrouped to build up bases, here we saw griefing, spleefing, and an absolute baker's dozen of puns, from both the neighbors and the bad bro bread boys. At this point, even they're not sure who they are anymore.
Hey, that's what you get for messing with the bread boys. The bad boys, I mean.
That's what you get when you mess with the bad
You want to say bread boys?
The bad boys.
You guys don't even know what you call it at this point.
The neighbors stood their ground and eventually reached a peaceful agreement, which was an extremely favorable deal for the nosy neighbors.
Can have up to a certain point in bread, like up to the T-junction. If you ever need wheat, feel free to take some bread.
Maybe Joel wasn't fully recovered from the many brushes with death he had while speed bridging. The bad boys have been busy building literal bridges, but it seems like that may have had the opposite effect on their metaphorical bridges between other groups. We'll just have to wait until next session to see how this all pans out.
While the bad boys were finding fights to pick in their own backyard, Team Ties decided to seek conflict elsewhere, going so far as to hop dimensions to do so. Near the end of the session, Tango, Impulse, and Skiz found themselves in the Nether.
The initial intent was to track down some soul sand, but once they caught sight of a nether fortress, those plans quickly changed. Skiz, with his lower hour count, was smart enough to head back to the overworld before things got hairy, but his teammates went on to conquer the fortress.
I don't even know why we're doing this.
Because we can!
They found minor loot, major blaze swarms, and saddles aplenty, but without a map, they weren't able to find their way out before the session ended.
We have no way of knowing if they ever found their way home. But if the next session starts with the TI of Ties still hopelessly lost, they'll only have themselves to blame.
At least they'll have a home to return to when they get back. Session 2 saw many teams making major progress on their respective bases. Ties Tower, the Coral Isles Beach House, and Martin's rebuilt Hourglass brought a variety of new builds to the sea, while the Clockers and the Nosy Neighbors added some rocking new structures on land.
The bad boys dedicated most of their session to building out the bread bridge, but their actual base at Bad Boy Manor seems to have taken a step backward. Though with Joel laying out foundations to begin building next week, and with the assumption that the existing bases are far from done, I'm sure we'll see more expansion in the coming episodes.
Expanding on this episode, here's Joju with his analysis of this week's session statistics.
Thanks, Salem. The biggest winner this week is Etho Standard Time, which continues to be the best way of measuring time on the server. Etho, Pearl, and Tango have never left the standard, but this week saw B-Dubs and Martin return to it as well. EST still has 18 hours and 15 minutes left on it, meaning that next week, everyone on it will turn yellow. Since Scott is the only one with more time left, this means that if nothing goes wrong for him, he will be the only green life left at the end of next session. There's a possibility that if someone on EST gets a boogie kill, they might be a green life also, but this is much less likely than Scott continuing to avoid drama. Also, Scar will finally actually turn yellow early next session before anyone else does, giving the Clockers an hour's worth of leverage against basically everyone. I'm sure that Scar will be incredibly responsible with his new power. Back to you.
Thank you for that analysis, Joju. To wrap up this episode, we'd also like to point out some interesting items that were collected and hoarded by various teams this session, some of which we suspect will become much more important in the future. With Scar being the first to go to yellow next week, we can only imagine that TNT minecart Joel gifted him will be put to good use soon enough.
But there are also some sneaky tactics at play to keep an eye on as the game progresses. Team Ties hid away a secret chest for valuables early this session, and later Martin dug a secret tunnel connecting Ties' basement garden to the Mean Girls Coral Reef. Tango and Impulse's trip to the Nether also guarantees their team potion ingredients for next session. With all that under one roof, maybe there's a reason Ties Tower is as big as it is. It's full of secrets.
With the session at its end, and with numerous yellow lives around the corner only 3 episodes in, this season is shaping up to be an interesting one indeed. The total death count is at 17, and with everyone's track record, that number is only going to go up next session. With a majority of the server allying against the bad boys and their bridge of bread, one can only assume their names may end up on that list. We'll have to wait until tomorrow to see where the game takes them.
Thank you so much to all of the new members of our team who have contributed countless hours to this episode's creation.
And thank you as well to Starry Skies Stuff for the amazing piece of art they created for last week's episode. Lyric and I were both more than a little excited when we saw it.
We'll be here this time next week to give you an update on whatever goes down in Episode 3 of Limited Life SMP. So until next time, my name is Salem.
And I've been Pixie. Thanks for tuning in.